You ever play Sonic Adventure 2? I think for most people that game was the introduction to Dreamcast aesthetic. The bright colors, the blocky and blobby models, the crazy ambition. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 both kind of define two separate ends of the Dreamcast, and one of those defining ways is just being cool. I never grew up with the thing, but if there's one thing I've always associated the Dreamcast with being, it's being cool. Different. A generation of gaming aesthetics all its own, characterized by the wavy, undulating oceans and the bright blue skies. Poly's higher than a PlayStation, but lower than a GameCube. Let's talk about some cool Dreamcast games. Maybe we'll hit on some you don't know about yet, or some things you wouldn't have known about the bigger ones. I don't know if I can fully express how much I love the late 90s Capcom aesthetic, man. Both 2D and 3D, across all kinds of genres. Look at any Capcom joint from this era, and it's gonna be one of the coolest looking things you've ever seen. With the bright, warm colors and distinctive designs, strength stretching all across from Rockman Dash to Eldorado Gate. Rival Schools is one of the more interesting early examples at not only branching out into 3D fighting games, but at doing it while expanding Street Fighter's universe a bit. And Project Justice is a decently fun follow-up to that. Did you know it's got a board game attached? Well, only Moero Justice Gakuen does, actually. It's a neat little bonus feature, though. Not as ambitious as the previous games Nekketsu, Seishun, Nikki, which provided a full life sim where you could interact with the characters and form relationships with them, but I like the little chibi models here. And the whole system of collecting your own party of Justice Gakuens so you can jump other players is, probably not a promotion of good public morals, but it's fun. Cool board, too. It's like a funny little diorama of one of the schools. Almost reminds me of that Danganronpa V3 minigame, honestly. If I could find anyone to play this with, it'd probably be a pretty fun time. But could it ever compare to Sonic Shuffle? We may never know.
For 500 years, dolphins and humans had lived together in unity, harmony, and fellowship. Together, they set out to explore the great unknown. Peace and friendship were offered to all who would welcome it.
3D Ecco. Not one I've really seen people discuss much. I guess I can kind of understand some of why. Opening's not great at giving you direction. But at the same time, this game's got one of the most cracked openings I've ever seen. Actual gameplay's got some vibes to it too. Part of it's the visual presentation, the long stretching, murky ocean floor going far beyond where you, Ecco, can actually swim to. That characteristic Dreamcast water, that's the stuff. Always glad to see it in its many forms. Mainly, though, it's the sound that does it. They got Tim Follin on this shit, and it shows. Not one of his more energetic soundtracks, but it's Ecco, man. The energy's different here. This kind of deeper, more aquatic, synthetic sound is a perfect fit for the dolphin and his freaky sci-fi universe. I'd love to talk about it more if I could figure out how the hell to save this baby whale, but hey, for our purposes, this much is enough. I'm sure I'll have a good time next time I try to push deeper into this game's watery depths. Girl's dad buys sturdy vase. Some would say unbreakable vase. Girl kicks vase. Dad vanishes and out of vase comes Tako. Pretty basic little grid-based puzzle game mechanically, just gotta guide Marina over here through small dioramas, grabbing items to keep her energy up and unlock new abilities, while you search for the people trapped within the vase, and along the way try to defeat the mad sorcerer whose soul is trapped within. Main wrinkle is you can't tell Marina what exact spaces to go to. You can only direct her directly to interactables. If you want to interact with something from a certain angle, you have to cancel her current action from that angle and select the thing you actually wanted her to mess with from there. Every now and then, Tako and Marine will stop to have a cute little chat and explain some new mechanics or the current objective. The animations are expressive, and the art still looks pretty sharp against the smoother, lower-def 3D environments. And there's some pretty sweet background animations happening out in the distance. Not too much to say about this one, but I like it. Thanks to the game's visual conveyance of stuff, I'd imagine it's something you can play pretty easy without a strong grasp of Japanese, too. So it might be worth checking out if you like cutesy puzzlers. Turb. This is one that's stuck with me for years, man. One of the first weird Dreamcast games I ever laid eyes on. There's actually a pretty specific history to old Turb here. It's the product of a former member of one of the more prolific PC98 Dojin circles, Bio 100%. They put out a series of Turb games culminating in Sengoku Turb. And this Sengoku Turb here happens to be connected to that very same Sengoku Turb, a real turbulent turb of events. What Dreamcast Turb takes the form of here is a madcap little comedy, sorta action RPG RTS, like Sacrifice or Brutal Legend, or those Xbox Kingdom Under Fire games if you ever played them. Not as well known a one as those, obviously. We open on our girl Gino here, getting blasted off an exploding planet and crash landing into another giant planet, shaped like the face of a cat. And within minutes of arriving, getting roped into leading the cat army in a war against the Sheep Kingdom. Core gameplay is basic. You assemble Gino and her squad and charge into battle. No direct control over the guys, just gotta give orders and hope they don't die. But if they survive, then they and Gino will build up XP and level up. Early fights are pretty simple, and you can just bash your own way through. But I got a bad feeling that squad comp and keeping everyone beefed up is gonna be critically important later whenever I get around to playing deeper in. Still, wandering around these low-poly maps, Def has a charm to it. They're full of odd little details, and you're let free to just spend however long you want in them after the fighting's done. Couple that with the game's wild audio design and soundtrack, and the unique sense of humor showcased in its almost sorta kinda animated cutscenes, and this is definitely a funny little oddball of a Dreamcast game. I'm into it. Now this one is a real catch. Dreamcast had its little pile of Windows CE games, which have generally made up the more annoying parts of the library to emulate. I'm pretty sure they actually only work on Flycast, but I might be wrong about that. But they do also make up some of the neater releases. I've seen a fair share of dedication and love for Kita-e white illumination, and it's not hard to see why. This game's vibes are off the goddamn charts. Even something as simple as this little pre-rendered plain cutscene. It's just got vibes, man. This is what I'm here for. This is the moment. It's got this funny, raw, little, immediately dated energy, and yet the way this whole scene is shot and presented, the sound design, it makes it dated in a weirdly timeless way. I really love it. It's kinda like Food Ike over on PlayStation. Same old central deal of being a VN-leaning dating sim set in Hokkaido using real photo backgrounds, but the approach is different. Food Ike was all about the cozy vibes, learning history, riding your bike, and looking back on the day as you write your little travel blog each night. No major choices to make beyond where you go and when, and typically the games avoid showing real people in their backgrounds, maintain this fuzzy illusion, the real physical world shown in the photographs, and the stylized hand-drawn people inhabiting and interacting with it. Kita-e does not try to maintain this perspective. In Kita-e, you'll just see some real-ass folks hanging out, some real-ass, blurry, faceless folks. It's both kinda creepy-looking and kinda funny, which, yeah, if there's one thing I can say about Kita-e's tone contrasted with Furaiki's, it's that Kita-e is funny. It's a funny game.
きっとすごく変わってるんじゃないかな。そう思って母さん、これ用意しといたんだ。明日持っていくといいよ。
It's not afraid to just hit you with a cheap laugh. If it was, every dialogue choice wouldn't give you the most insane option possible. What the fuck are you talking about, man? It also feels like it leans harder on the dating sim end compared to Fudaiki. Fudaiki's only got about 3 girls to pursue, and pursuing them is, well, more just agreeing to meet them at certain spots and being there when they're there. Kita-e has a somewhat more traditional structure. You're not gonna be motorbiking around here. The tone may also be somewhat influenced by our boy here being not a working adult, a traveling journalist, but rather a high school second year who's in a serious slump. Fulaiki man came to Hokkaido to try and win an award in journalism so he could repay his father figure. Kita-e boy came here because he's lonely and his mom thought the best thing to cheer him up was to give him a ticket to Hokkaido for summer break so he can see his childhood friend again. This mom truly understands the mentality of a dating sim boy. I could see myself coming back here for more of this game at some point. Well, assuming Windows CE Dreamcast emulation ever gets a bit more stable. Sekai Fushigi Hakken is a Japanese television program, a history show, aired on TBS. For our purposes, though, it's a weird-ass Windows CE walking sim. Yeah, I guess walking sim is the best way to describe this, huh? Fushigi Hakken Troia has us simply wandering around a kinda funny, kinda cute, kinda spooky, low-poly rendition of Troy. The CG cutscenes are entrancingly strange-looking, and the environments and model quality are, speaking most charitably, just a step below M. Dickey classic The U Testament. Game is definitely a vibe. I suppose it lands a bit in the edutainment sector, but mostly you just walk around and take in the atmosphere of this weird little Troy diorama, while your guide buddy talks your ear off, explaining all the history here and talking about how much he wants another drink.
やっぱりもう一杯酒飲んでおけばよかったな。
Got everything from airy outdoorsy places secluded only by the strange blue haze of a very low draw distance, lined up with very oddly textured and blocky Trojan buildings, to spooky little caved-in tunnels. No music, just the sounds of Troy surrounding you. A little chill, a little boring, but very distinct, until Flycast's Windows CE problems caused the end of space-time. Guess we should have been more careful about traveling into the past just to get info for a TV show. Now we've locked all of history into an infinite loop of this one moment. I know what you might say. What is Senko no Ronde? No, the other question. Isn't Senko no Ronde a Naomi game? Yes, the Naomi is still a Dreamcast. I would be remiss not to mention my favorite fighting game series when given the chance. How to describe Senko no Ronde? Well, on a gameplay level, it's a fighting game about dancing a ronde. An attempt to blend the signature stylings of fighting game and shoot 'em up with the aerial action of a sci-fi mecha anime. Senko no Ronde settled on inventing its own signature style of play. Two robots, referred to as rounders, face off in a large ring that's set up to contain the chaos of battle. You got your basic attack, usually just some basic machine gun fire or a linear beam of sorts. But don't worry, you got your requisite weird guys who don't do either. Every guy's got a sub, and the sub varies character by character in more wild ways than the primary fire. Could be anything from firing two linear beams designed to corner and enclose the opponent, to spraying the field with proximity bombs, to laying mines that can be used for everything from stun locking to cornering, to a bit of brief cover. If anything, subs actually tend to make up the most important part of characters' arsenal, so you've really got to get a handle on these. A word of advice: if you're fighting a Chongpo, hope they forget about that button. Pressing both buttons together activates a barrage. These constitute the real tools of the trade, the fundamentals of your moveset, your Hadokens, your Psycho Balls, your Bandit Bringers. With the difference in playing field, obviously you get a difference in input. Most inputs in Senko no Ronde involve forward and back movements, circles and quarter circles. They can be tricky to pull off, but it's usually very worth it. Besides all that, of course, you have the dash and shield. They work about as you'd expect. Dash is fun to pull off when you learn to do it well. It commits you to the direction you dash in, but you get to change that direction mid-dash for emergency maneuvers. Shield eats bullets, but it costs meter to use. The same meter you use not only for the aforementioned barrages, but for the big mechanic. BOSS. Boss mode, baby. Boss mode's such a funny thing, honestly. I mean, it makes perfect sense. The bosses are a big part of shmups. How do we convey that in a versus fighter? Easy. Have a mechanic where one player turns into a shmup boss for like 10 seconds. Of course, given this eats your entire meter, boss mode isn't something you just pull out on a whim. You gotta save for it. It's an emergency strategy. If all else is failing, go boss mode and just see if you manage to nuke them in time. Everyone has their own boss form, and some of them are fucking crazy. And that's before getting into the real emergency maneuver. When a player runs out of HP, they get a very brief window of invulnerability, entering a mode called Overbanish. In Overbanish, your meter charges up a bit faster, and when you boss mode, you get one extra attack. Predictably, the most devastating one in your arsenal. Some of these are near undodgeable and pack a hell of a punch. It's why one strategy you might want to play safe with is saving up meter right when your opponent is on their last legs, and entering boss mode yourself before they get the chance. Overbanish boss mode doesn't let you regain HP, but those attacks are devastating enough for it to be a big threat. Last but not exactly least I should mention is melee combat. When you're drawing close to your opponent, you get to try and smack them around a bit. This can be intense. You can't be careless with melees or you could get your own shit wrecked. Main fire and sub fire are swapped with a light combo and a heavy attack. And if the heavy hits, the opponent loses a bit of meter. High mobility means evasion and countering is key. Only go up close if you really think you can handle it. Senko no Ronde's structure, its gameplay concepts, they are utterly unique. This game genuinely broke ground. It invented a fighting game subgenre that, basically only lives on in indie games like Acceleration of Suguri. 1v1 mecha action existed prior to this, obviously, and there are definitely cues taken from the likes of Virtual On, but Senko's take is such a drastic evolution, it really cannot be directly compared to just about anything else. It is a beautiful work of mechanical and design ingenuity and creativity. So much so that it got me to excitedly talk in depth about action game mechanics for the first time on this channel. Okay, that was a lot of words about the mechanics of Senko no Ronde. But now a few words about the thing that really made me fall in love with this game. I love mecha, I love slice of life, I love sci-fi, I love weird surrealism and focus on interpersonal relationships between weird and funny people. It is so hard for me to think of a fictional setting that is as much of what I like in this area as Senko no Ronde. It combines everything I love about Guilty Gear and BlazBlue with everything I love about, like, Rinne no Lagrange and Overman King Gainer. And of course, the Dreamcast era vibes are such a big part of that. Just like the music. The music, man. Dude, what the fuck was Yasuhisa Watanabe on here?
No matter what track, every single one, every song in this game, every single track is utterly beautiful. It's almost difficult for me to come up with the words to fully convey what I feel from this soundtrack. It is at times upbeat and exciting and action-packed, at other times ethereal, alien, cold, and haunting, and yet always maintains this sort of gentle grace to it. The music is always playing its own sort of dance. It composes a heart that dances its own ronde. Anyway, yeah. I really like Senko no Ronde. That's the end of the video.